I think Bitcoiners are built completely differently from pretty much everybody else out there. People who are stock investors, people who are real estate investors. If the stock market were to fall, let's say 70, 80, 90%, I don't think most of the people buying stocks would continue to hold on to their assets. But I think, on the other hand, with Bitcoin, those people will continue to hold no matter what because they're so convicted in everything they've studied, everything that they've learned. And I want to pass it off to you guys just to give me your thoughts on this. What do you guys think about how Bitcoiners are built versus really everybody else?
I think it is the ability to hold Bitcoin is one of the things, right? With the volatility, the term diamond hands. I think there's a lot of people holding Bitcoin, and I think the other way that Bitcoiners are built differently is just they're open-minded enough to start to begin to understand something like Bitcoin, and they're skeptical enough as well of the rest of all the charlatans in the crypto space, and they're skeptical enough of the current system that they were raised in. So it's kind of this combination of like open-minded but also skeptical. I think it takes a specific type of person to actually adopt Bitcoin and to understand it and build conviction on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that a big part of it too is, as a Bitcoiner, how long have you guys been in Bitcoin? I guess I should have asked that earlier, but it's been about 4 or 5 years for me. What about you guys? About the same?
Yeah, about the same to different degrees. Yeah.
I think I started studying around 2021 or 2022. I think it was
Okay.
2021.
So about the same. And I can say personally through those 4 or 5 years, 98% of that time, my friends, family, coworkers, everybody I know has called me a dipshit, whether to my face or behind the scenes. But you kind of have to get used to that as a Bitcoiner, that you're going to be wrong for most of the time. And that 2% or 1%, you look like an absolute genius, but it's hard to see your net worth go down. You have to have conviction to hold through that. And I think a big part of our future here is actually going to be holding through the highs. I think that's going to be the next challenge for Bitcoiners, is not only holding when it gets really hard, but holding on to it when it's 100,000 and then 500,000 and then 1,000,000. Because we have to keep in mind here that the majority of Bitcoin is still owned by us, by individuals. And slowly it's starting to seep into the BlackRocks and the US governments, and it's just going to continue. So we as Bitcoiners have to have enough conviction to hold through the lows and especially the highs, because once it goes into the BlackRock vacuum, it's never coming back our way. So that's part of it. And we got a tweet here from who's it from? Michael Rolls?
Michael Ruiz.
Rules.
Yeah.
So Rajat, you want to take us through this?
Yeah. So when we look at this tweet, we can see the guy has a graphic here, really great graphic. I thought this was really interesting. Basically, what a sovereign individual is. So we have relentless, independent thought, so they can think for themselves. They have an unshakable sense of self, so they believe in their future. They believe in themselves. They believe in who they are, what their ideologies are, and they have high agency action. So what that means is they're great at making their own decisions from what I can see here. But let's go, if we go through the tweet, we can see first trait is unshakable sense of self, grounded in principle, unmoved by pressure, uninterested in validation, and guided by a clear sense of purpose. So the way that I see it, Bitcoiners aren't about continuously saying the same thing no matter what. I think they're more about studying something to the degree where nobody can question what they know because they've looked at it from so many different angles. They've tried studying Bitcoin, all the things that they know, they've tried studying them from different angles. At least for me, for example, I try to see where things could go wrong. Let's say with Bitcoin, I think the first year, 2 years were me studying how where Bitcoin is going, what it is, how the money system works. And then after that, everything that I study now is basically how Bitcoin could fail. And I want to know that what I've looked at in the past isn't missing any specific points of views. And I think this is exactly what builds that unshakable sense of self.
One definition in there, uninterested in validation, it reaches out to me a little bit. Like, it goes back to what Jor said about people thinking that you're dumb for investing in Bitcoin. I think if if you're to take like, you know, a couple $100,000 and buy a rental property, you could tell your friends and family, oh, I have a rental property, you know, I'm into real estate. They would really respect that. There's like an air of like respect around that. If you're like, oh, I bought $200,000 of Bitcoin or a couple $100,000 of Bitcoin, people are like, are you out of your mind? Like, that's crazy. Are you insane? So there's a total like, you have to not care about what other people think. That's really important. Uninterested in validation.
Yeah, and when I see this part of the tweet, it screams Jeff Booth to me. It says it's not about ego. Is that what it says? Not about ego. It's about conviction.
Yeah.
And his company is literally called Ego Death. And I think that that is one of the biggest obstacles of people when they first get into Bitcoin is the ego. They've been in real estate for 20 years. They've told that, you know, that amount of people, their friends, their clients about real estate. Same with Peter Schiff. He's a perfect example of that. He's been in gold. He's been telling his audience for decades to buy gold, and he can't see past that. He can't put his ego aside and admit that he's wrong about it for the betterment of his audience. So it's not about ego. It's about putting in the time, putting in the proof of work to understand this thing. And it doesn't really matter what other people think. And that's kind of what Jeff Booth says is as long as this thing stays decentralized and secure, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter who the government is. It doesn't matter what the economy's like. Bitcoin is going to win in the end. And he's done the work to understand that. And I'm not there yet in terms of where Jeff Booth has been, but I'm well on the way there. So I can definitely understand that aspect of it.
Yeah. All right, let's head to the next one here. First, we can see he clearly, we see in this message he embedded in the Bitcoin Genesis block the message that he posted. This wasn't random; it was an intentional declaration of values, a direct shot at the corrupt financial system. So, I think this is really important because the people who see this now, they know exactly what it's referring to. So, the second one here. Next, we see it in his approach to dealing with his doubters. I actually love this quote. If you don't believe me or don't get it, I don't have time to convince you. I actually tried to use that here and there, but I feel like it's a little mean. I think people genuinely do want to know. But at a point, you kind of have to, like with Peter Schiff. I think he's lucky that people are sending him Bitcoin because he's talked so much garbage. Right, he's creating his own strategic Bitcoin reserve, as he calls it. But there's so much wrong things that he said about Bitcoin, and I don't think people have really done this to him. I think Bitcoiners are too generous.
Yeah, agreed.
I also kind of think that he is talking his own book. He has a company that sells gold. I mean, he's just trying to relate to an audience that is, you know, like him, that thinks Bitcoin's a scam, gold's the real, you know, the natural ledger that gold has is superior. You know, it's tangible. You can hold it. Bitcoin, it doesn't even exist. It's nothing. Like that's a whole, you know, that's basically what he's saying. Or that it's no different than any of the other cryptocurrencies. That another argument he has. So it doesn't make it scarce. Anyway, so he's talking his own book. So I think that's important to know about Peter Schiff. He's trying to sell gold. He's not trying to buy gold. He's trying to sell gold.
Right. Yeah. I think that's one thing I've changed my mind in the last couple of years. Just starting a YouTube channel and seeing how much interest is out there in the world around Bitcoin and people wanting to learn about Bitcoin. That's one thing I've really changed my mind about is I don't waste any sort of time trying to convince people. And that's this quote, right? I don't have the time to convince you. I'm going to focus my time on the people who actually want to learn. There's plenty of people out there who want to learn Bitcoin. And that's who I'm committed to helping. Anybody who's willing to listen, I'm willing to have a conversation with and help them understand what this asset is a little bit better. Yeah.
Okay, and let's go to the next one here. There's no greater proof than this for his unshakable sense of self. Satoshi stayed anonymous. I won't go into that. Of course, that's important. But next trait is relentless commitment to independent thought. So they're willing to question authority. They're willing to challenge assumptions and think beyond the herd.
That's a big one. It's huge. I think of that meme of like that one person standing in a crowd with like 100,000 people against him saying you're all wrong. But that's essentially what it is. That's how it feels like to be a Bitcoiner. Is like even when the world's trying to convince you that this thing's a scam, this thing's a Ponzi scheme, at every corner of life, you have the conviction. You don't care what other people say. You're not going to just accept being like anybody else. I think if you're in Bitcoin, it's because you obviously see an opportunity But you see the issue with remaining complacent and being like everybody else, because in that world, you're competing against everybody else. No one wins in that other than the people at the top who are in charge of the money printer. But these are people who are willing to go against the herd, to assert their own, not even their own opinions on the world. It's just, what you know, and you don't care what other people think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And let's go to that final trait there. I think the people can go through the other parts themselves. The third trait of a sovereign mindset is high agency action. High agency people don't wait for permission, don't make excuses, don't get paralyzed by obstacles. And I think Bitcoiners are exactly like this. Like on this, Satoshi Nakamoto did something that the rest of the world had no idea could be done, and he just changed everything that we know about money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the part of this that I kind of relate to most is Nostr. Nostr is something that's being built around Bitcoin. It doesn't directly involve Bitcoin, but there's a lot of people out there within Bitcoin, the developers and Nostr developers, who are willing to put in work without any sort of guarantee for success or that people are really going to show up. They just see a better way. They're willing to spend their very scarce time and energy building that, regardless of what the rest of the world thinks. They're putting things in place because they want a better world. And that's the one thing that really drew me to Bitcoin throughout my journey here, is when you listen to a Bitcoiner versus somebody who's in crypto or altcoins, they have much different motives and incentives there. I got the vibe from Bitcoiners that they really want to change the world. They want to help people. Whereas the other side of things, they just want to extract as much from their audience as possible. So that's kind of what I think of in this sense.
Yeah. And I would also say that for anybody thinking about, am I well suited to become a Bitcoiner? I think if you're asking yourself that, you probably are. You could probably, everybody can work on who they are. So if if you start looking into how to become more confident of yourself, of the way you think, these are practices. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And, starting to take action, right? High agency action. Just, start thinking about the person you want to be, and you'll probably recognize that Bitcoin will fit into who you are.
Yeah, very well said.
So Bitcoiners are built differently. I think that if you're here watching this, you should understand how, not lucky you are, but how fortunate you are to be born during this time and to be actually spending some of your scarce time and energy learning about this for the betterment of your family's future, for society. It takes some stones. And I think that that's the moral of the story here, is it takes some balls to be in Bitcoin. And you should appreciate that and give yourself a little tap on the back, and your family's going to thank you certainly in the next couple of decades here. So good episode today, boys. Again, we got a QR code right beside Rajat's head there. If you enjoyed this, if you agree with us, you can send as much as you want to that QR code there. So thanks, fellas. We'll catch you on the next one.